Paulo, or as we like to call him on the jiu-jitsu mats, Pao, holds a degree in psychology, has a master's, and is currently in pursuit of a PhD in clinical psychology. Like Papaloy and I, Pao is a father to a daughter. So being able to hear his diverse views within the following discussion was particularly interesting.
And on top of that, we covered a lot of things in this episode. I mean, it was like almost more than 2 hours, maybe.
Yeah, it was
So
long.
yeah, so we didn't only talk about psychology or martial arts, basically everything, even life and death. That's why. So stay tuned.
As a Phil Am who'd always had a desire to understand more about the Filipino, his points about language in the household and how it pertains to the cultural collective here in the Philippines really captivated me. Uh, but of course, as fellow mat rats, it was inevitable that we'd get into martial arts and, of course, like you said, Papaloy, fatherhood.
Fatherhood, exactly. So just keep listening as we have this conversation, and this is our father time with Pau.
So thank you for being here.
Yeah, welcome. You're actually our first guest
Yeah,
for
yeah,
this
no,
for this
yeah. Thanks so
podcast.
much for having me. Also,
It's always interesting to think about kids and martial arts, because we have people around us, family members that do martial arts and like to do that around the kids sometimes. Like, what's your take on that with kids and combat sports? Are you is that something that you obviously have brought? Like I said earlier, you would bring your daughter to practice sometimes. So is that something that you're hoping she's going to pick up? Maybe if it's not jujitsu, maybe it's Muay Thai or boxing.
yeah, yeah. That's the whole idea there that kids or our kids would see us do sports, something doing physical, and something that we do because martial arts is different. I mean, in a way, in a sense that it gives you the kind of discipline that you need to do and the kind of restraint that you need to do and so goes with the physicality of it. So I was just hoping to let my daughter understand it's not all about violence but
Mm,
rather the art of it
yeah.
and also the physicality that one needs to be healthy as much as possible
Yeah.
and um try to also be a little bit competitive, I guess, in a
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
So that's about it. If she finds it enjoyable, I guess free to explore through it. And if
Mm,
she doesn't find it, interesting, then we can switch to another one, like anything that involves something about physicality.
mm,
Nowadays, like kids would rather just sit on the, sit and have their gadgets on. So if you show them you yourself, like as an example of like, hey, we can also have fun without gadgets and stuff.
mm,
Hmm.
I guess it's a nice it's a nice what do you call it's a nice thing for them for you to show them that it's not all about this gadgets. There's also socialization part of there, right? You get
mm,
to socialize with other students and try to not just being competitive, but try to make friends and try to gauge each other, like not too rough,
mm.
being flow. I mean, in terms to jujitsu and stuff. Uh, in taekwondo, you get to see also, and because I do taekwondo and I also do krav maga, so I guess I let her. I mean, I'm showing her different kinds of martial arts,
Yeah,
and
that's
at the same
good.
time
Mm,
exposing her that it's not all like violence. It's more of
mm,
like how to get along with different people
mm.
and how to make friends also. So I guess that's one of the
Mm.
things that I wanted to show my daughter.
Yeah, that's good. And also, I like the philosophy behind the art, which if we study martial arts, I mean, I haven't studied that hard myself. I've gone to a few lessons. That's about it. But I'm also interested in the philosophy behind every martial art out there, and when we hear about these people who are in the discipline, especially the ones who are masters, those type who really explore not just the physical aspect of it, but the mental and the spiritual as well. It's really, I mean, to watch it is just even inspiring. It just gets you into it. Because I remember when we were kids, like we would all like see the Mr. Miyagi type, so we wanted to study karate, right? Like most of us, like I want to be
Yeah,
Daniel
for
San.
sure.
Yeah, and the story and the compelling thing about the Karate Kid was not just his journey through martial arts, but overcoming the obstacles
Hmm.
in his life, not having a father and all that. So I think that's why every kid in the '80s connected with that movie as well. So it blends both the mental aspect of martial arts and the spiritual, the philosophy, the physical, etc.
Yeah, and I like what you said earlier too, Pao, about you kind of provide like a space where your
Mm.
daughter can explore something, even if they don't maybe always want to do it, or don't show
Yeah.
interest. I mean, at least you're providing a space like this place is safe. Daddy's here with these people. It's not a big deal.
But how come a lot of kids quit early on? I've always noticed that. Like me, when I was in grade school, I remember just having a few weeks or maybe a couple of months in karate class, and I was like,
Hmm.
nah, this is too hard for me.
I think that's
and, it,
it's
and it goes for a lot of kids who try maybe jujitsu now and like, nah, I'd rather play, as Pal have said a while ago, like video games and all that stuff. It's all good, but how do we instill that the value of martial arts in with children, especially now they're competing for their attention?
I think that's the important part about competition.
Mm,
Competition is important. Like if you're just taking martial arts and you're just kind of sparring and not really doing serious competition on a regular basis, I think it's a big aspect that's going to
mm,
motivate someone to train more, right? Like when they get to see up against another person who's been preparing how skilled they are,
mm.
then they get to see that in real time,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of feedback for a developing person.
Yeah, it also gives it also gives like confidence, I guess self
Mm,
Mm.
confidence,
mm,
for the individual to go through martial arts or any competitive aspect of anything. Basically, could be educational, it could be in a physical form, or it
yeah.
could be in any aspect that it's like growing with the sport and improving also. So when they get to see other kids same age, they get to be sort of encouraged, like, oh, if she can do it, I can do it.
Mm, mm,
And it's more of like that, and eventually you get to grow with it and be focused towards the sports itself. But it doesn't work all the time, but it's more of like providing the space, creating mistakes and stuff like that, so, and then
Mm.
not really pressuring, but rather making them enjoy the
mm, mm.
enjoyment part. People really forget the enjoyment part. Like they need to enjoy it before they become competitive.
Yeah.
So the enjoy part is the first one, like when they get to see other kids and run around,
Mm,
rather than like, oh, this is step one, everybody should do step one. It's more of like, no, that's what I like about seeing kids in jiu-jitsu, when Coach Ben or Coach Popo would
mm,
give lessons for the kids, because
mm.
they're like just running around and having fun, and everybody's smiling and like, oh, can we do tumbling? So basically you're just allowing them to just tumbling around and
Yeah,
stuff like that in
Mm.
a
that's great.
space, a safe space. So that's the encouraging part there. It's providing them with a venue for that excitement and exploring, trying to explore their physicalities, and just try to imagine, like when they're on a playground, they get to imagine things and then run around and stuff like that. That's what we need to encourage, rather than like, you stay there because it's safe here on that bubble of yours. So eventually, when they grow up, it needs to be like that. But in your case, though, it depends when you get your niche or when you get your interest.
Yeah, it's well said. I'm
Mm.
curious to know with those thoughts. How do you instill discipline in the household? Like, if you don't mind me asking, I don't know if that's too personal to ask. Like, is there? Can you give examples of how you apply those disciplines from what you've understood in these different martial arts into
Oh,
your child? Like, how do you translate that over?
it's basically the discipline nowadays. The way I perceive it, it's just my opinion, right? It's the way I perceive the discipline thing. It's more of your tolerance towards your kid. It's more of because I'll give you an example. Most parents would say, "Don't do that," and
Mm-hmm.
then the kid would cry.
Mm.
Sure.
So because of that, less tolerance and less. I mean, not being patient. Um, the parent would just, okay, just I'll give you this so that you'll be, you can just shut up or something like that. Sorry for the word,
Sure.
but
Sure.
it's more of the tolerance. It's more of your tolerance on when a no is basically a no, and then you provide an explanation why it becomes a no, and then it's not being a total of no, but I mean, it's not actually a no, but rather a statement of not now, maybe later,
Mm.
or not now, maybe on weekends, something like that. So it's more of your tolerance of if she cries or he cries or does tantrums and whatever the feeling of the kid has, then you sort of like have that kind of tolerance, like you understand, you don't shut it down, you understand and you let
Mm.
them be, but also you give them an explanation of what makes it a no and what makes it what's the reason for having that kind of restraint. So it's more of you trying to explain things and trying to be patient on the kid, because
Mm.
they just that itself gives you gives a sort of structure. That's the structure that you're trying to make. So if you sort of follow through, eventually they grow on it, and eventually it becomes their values also.
Mm.
So when they have the kind of classes in school and stuff like that, they sort of develop the kind of values that
Yeah.
you instill on them,
Mm.
and it's just more of you making it very consistent.
Yeah, consistent.
Consistent, because most of the parents, like,
Mm. True.
that's the key. Makes it consistent, because if you're not consistent, then if you're sort of like
Yeah, you're
slacking
just
off with
breaking the chain,
your
right?
own principles.
Yeah. My wife and I argue about that a lot, like consistencies. Like, I thought we agreed to raise her this way. I mean, why are we deviating from the plan suddenly? Why are we letting her watch some YouTube videos? She's only 8 months old. It's like, all right, okay, okay, okay. Let's adjust a little bit. Consistency. I like that. Yeah, that's very true.
uh,
Did
I mean, yeah. There's always that part, like the ideal part that we try to instill.
Mm.
It's, yeah, as much as possible. It's as ideal as possible, but you can't really, like, for instance, the YouTube and the Barney stuff, and
Mm.
what's the other one? Peppa Pig,
Peppa
and so on and
Pig.
so forth. Peppa Pig,
Coach Bubble
yeah,
hates
Peppa
that.
Pig.
Peppa
yeah.
Pig, I remember it.
But it's part of what they like. So the thing is how you're gonna regulate it.
Mm.
You allow them in a certain period of time, certain period of day, but it's more of regulation. But you
Mm.
really can't take away Barney. I really thought I wouldn't
Yeah.
go through Barney stuff. It's
Mm.
like, oh, I'm not gonna memorize Barney. Never. I'm gonna,
Yeah. Now
you
you do.
know, never gonna watch it. But now, yep, with
you
all the
know
songs and
you know every song. You
I
know
hate
every.
that damn purple dinosaur, man. But I gotta love it.
yeah. Yeah, because it's for your kids. So you have
Yeah.
to sing with it, and also um, the content of it. You really have to watch with your kid, because, like,
Yeah, because you gotta
okay, let me see
interact
if
with
it's
them,
really
right?
safe.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you really have to be immersive so that
Yeah, you
when
can't
your
just
kid
leave
says
them
something,
alone, right? Like watching or listen to the song by themselves. You have to be there to interact with them. So it's very important. That's why you have
Yeah,
to spend time like singing the song with them and then interacting and then what is the
yeah. See,
word that my
eventually
wife
singing
uses?
in your sleep.
Engaged. There you go. She has or he has to be engaged with you as the parent, and you know because their attention would be fixed, and you would see their eyes just waiting for your every gesture, and you would just respond accordingly. So, yeah, I think it's a follow up question. Do you think how important it is for parents to study at least a little bit of psychology? Because we observe our children, right? And then if we're by the book, sometimes we read about developmental psychology. Should I raise her this way, that way? There's a lot of science out there that we have to absorb, and that's I think the difficult part to navigate as parents because we have so many information. Some of our local practices here are probably like outdated. I would say like don't feed them honey. They used to feed us honey before, so
Oh
we right.
yeah, same here. Same here. It's like, why won't you feed honey? Because
Yeah.
it has the content of this. It has
Yes.
a wax
Yes.
on it. So, but
Uh-huh.
why? But I didn't die, something like
But grandma and
that.
grandpa wouldn't listen. They would just feed her or him honey anyways. All right.
True, true. I guess the key. I guess the key. I'm also a very traditional kind of,
Mm,
kind of individual, and sometimes I deviate through the science of it.
mm,
Sometimes I have my own biases and beliefs
mm,
when it comes to raising kids. It's a matter of you and your partner's communication. It has to have that kind of specific balance.
mm,
Um, when it's sort of like this. You gotta play the good cop and the bad cop.
mhm,
Yeah, yeah, has to be like that. Like when one of you guys is sort of like one of you guys sort of have this kind of having such a bad mood and very um hyped up or
emotional.
just having a bad mood,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
very emotional,
Yeah.
then you'd play
Emo.
on the opposite part.
Mm,
Yeah, so it needs to be like a yin yang thing.
mhm,
And for yes, it's very true. Grandparents would mostly spoil because it's the grandkids, so you have to give them
mm,
all and stuff. You have to give them stuff. Then I usually allow it. It's what they usually do. I allow it. It's just me on the side. It's like if you give him candy, sure, yeah, go
why not?
ahead.
Yeah.
But why not? If it makes it happy, yeah. But as long as you brush your teeth and drink a lot of water, then go ahead. And when you're home, you don't really follow it up. It's just basically when you're with your grandparents, it's go ahead. Do shopping as much as you can. Don't really. You have to put also like boundaries, but like I said, grandparents will always spoil their
Mm.
grandkids.
And you would always say to your kid,
So
like, "I had tough love." What is tough love in the first place? Like, okay, did they beat you up or something?
Yeah. It's love with a belt.
Yeah,
yeah,
love with a belt.
yeah,
That was pretty common back in our days, right? I mean,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I got my fair share of whooping.
for sure.
for real. You name your weapon.
Yeah.
Weapon of choice: slippers. You have your broomstick. You have your whatever whatever your mom or dad can and pick up. You have your belt, and you have your what do you call that? Stay in your room. You have your grounded sort of.
You know you're a
I
bad
don't know
kid
back.
if your mom or dad brings out a bat or a knife after you.
For sure. For real, that's how we grew up. It's. I think we're showing our age to the listeners
Yeah.
right now. It's like you guys are so old school.
A lot of our generation are afraid to hit our kids, right? I don't know. Even I am. I mean,
Why
for
would you
me,
need to
yeah.
though?
Why would you need
I
to?
don't
But
know why you. I don't know why you would
the
need
the
to.
the old people, the we call them
Just uppercut your kid like in the gut. Jeez, that's
the
pretty harsh,
the
man.
grandparents are convinced that you should get an ass
For
whooping.
real. Yeah. I had my fair share of that. So I think we grew up in the same kind of era. So
Yeah.
times have changed right now. Like
Mm.
they have
Is
this
it for
set
the
of
better? You think?
rules. Could be good or bad. It
Mm,
depends on how you're gonna use it, though.
yeah. It's like, are we raising
Like
soft kids or I don't know. That's why.
Yeah.
you have to really try to like and understand things and try to balance things out. It's not gonna be perfect for sure. It's not gonna be
True. But
perfect,
we got to change some
but
things, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to you because it's gonna be very complicated in the sense that your kind of values of how you grew up and the values of your
Mm,
partner how she grew up or he grew up. So
yeah.
sort of like it's meshed together and it's like a hybrid values where you tend to impart your kids. And plus there's a plus on it, the values
Mm,
of your grandparents or your parents and the other ones
yeah.
like your in-laws and stuff like that. So it's really going to be confusing for the kid,
Yeah.
but for you, you really have to set that sort of adjustment that this is for your kid, and then the values that you put in is shown rather not just been taught and just conversations, but
Mm,
shown like
showing
you
them.
get the kid would see you like, yeah,
And
the kid would
emulate
see
you,
you
right?
like, oh, he's
Mm,
not doing that because
mm,
of this. Yeah, it's more of like that, and spending time also.
mm,
More you spend time, the influence and the how things are done. The kid would always understand. They're really smart nowadays.
yeah.
They're sort of like advanced,
They have
advanced.
so
I
much
guess with the
information too.
technology.
Yeah, true.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So it's like, what's this? Sometimes I even ask my kid to. So what's this channel? It's like this channel is that, but I don't like this.
Yeah, this
The
is
bad
dumb.
the
Why are you
bad things
watching
that
this?
uh,
Change the
something
channel.
like
No,
that. So
no, block
yeah,
that shit. Block it.
True. That and and also we can always instill discipline without being violent. I mean, that's the idea, right?
yeah,
We can teach
yeah,
them strength
exactly.
without inflicting violence. We can show them that we can be strong without having to be that way. So it depends. Yeah,
But
it's
you're still planning to monitor your kid's messenger, right?
yeah. I do. I mean, I
That's
personally,
too.
I
I'm gonna
Yeah,
monitor the shit
until
out of
she's
that.
probably 30, she'll hate me
yeah.
for it. It's a
Same here. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's any parent would agree and would be doing that if you really
So you don't use
you know
a cyber nanny, do you, pal?
um for me during the face to face school during the school days,
Yeah.
we used to have like a watch with a SIM card that does the tracking and then the
Nice.
voice. It's like a phone. It's
Okay.
a small
Oh,
tracking. It's a cheap tracking thing, like
nice. Okay.
tracking and the phone. So
Mm,
when she's like out for lunch, like, oh, I'm already here with my lunch and just waiting for me to prepare and watch her eat, and then just make sure she eats and stuff like that. Or
Mm.
she has problems in class, then I tend to she tends to call her just after classes, like she's done with her class
Oh,
and she's
nice.
waiting for the
mm,
gate at the gate rather.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's more of like that. There's this advantages of technology. It's not
Yeah.
this
mm.
disadvantage.
Mhm.
There are
Mhm.
also advantages
Oh, for
for
sure.
that. Like so the
Do you
tracking part and the messenger thing, yeah, it's sort of like you can have your own account with the messenger,
yeah.
monitor people, I guess, who gets in and who talks to your kid. It's like that.
You recommend that setup that you have? Do you have to pay for that? Is that
It
like a monthly service or
depends.
something, or
I think it's free.
is that free?
Yeah.
No, it's free,
Yeah,
man.
it's
Oh,
free.
Yeah,
really? Oh,
it's
that's nice.
free.
That's why every parent should know how to
It,
navigate the
Yeah.
parental controls,
Yeah.
at least with their
Yeah. Have a kids
YouTube
account.
yeah,
account,
Uh-huh.
Facebook,
YouTube Kids.
YouTube Kids.
yeah.
Jeez.
YouTube Kids. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
YouTube Kids and Messenger Kids, I think, is also there. Like everything passes through you, and even the consoles, the gaming consoles. I
Gaming
got a
consoles.
Nintendo Switch.
It's online now.
There's a parental controls.
Mm,
Like yeah, so you get to shut it off. Like okay, time's up. It's already 10 or 11. The
true.
bad part of it is the bad part of it is you also get to, since you need to show them an example, so I get to sleep early also. I wake up early, so it's like that. You have to go with the flow. So and it's your growth and her growth or his growth.
How do we compete with that? I mean, that's always been a mystery for me. I mean, it scares me in a way, actually, because I'm fairly new to this fatherhood thing. But uh, I'm optimistic about the future, but at the same time, I'm very concerned and I don't know, scared, I guess, because now from what I'm observing, it's like kids, even we touched on this a couple of episodes ago. Like we, even us as adults, are like glued to our to technology, to our
Sure.
phones, and
All
sometimes
day.
we neglect even some attention to our wives or our children because like we're enjoying too much in this
Scrolling.
scrolling thing, and then suddenly you remember, shit, oh my god, I spent like an hour just now just
Just
looking through my.
scrolling.
I could have done a lot of shit, man. So how do you
For real,
compete
for
with that?
real.
Like
Yeah.
even us,
The
we fall
slot machine.
victim to this insanity that is beautiful at the same time. I love technology,
Sure.
man, and but at the same time, it could be detrimental to our society. And we always talk about building a better society through our children. So if you guys have any ideas out here that we can probably talk about, that would be a good one.
You get to notice that when you're sort of like eating a meal
Mm.
together, but each of you guys have a gadget.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
different
right.
kind of a child.
We should have a
You
no
sort of like
gadget
notice
Yeah,
rule
like,
yeah.
oh,
during
None
mealtime.
at the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, no way.
yeah. So that's the kind of rules that not just your kid would sort of follow, but also you to make it consistent.
Mm.
It's like,
Mm.
oh, okay, I gotta remind myself that I need, because I'm also guilty for with that kind of thing, like just scrolling down up with Facebook and while eating. It's like, oh, it's hard to preach when you're not doing that.
Practicing it, right?
Yeah,
True, true. You have to
Yeah.
practice what you preach, right?
yeah,
So you got
yeah.
to show them, like, look at me. Like you're telling you, put down the phone. What about you, Dad? You're a hypocrite.
Yeah.
For real, for real.
So you're gonna set an example, and it takes discipline. And going back to martial art teaches you that. So everybody, take up martial arts now. Go to their gym, and maybe in a few years, I hope so. We get through this pandemic. I'm
Yeah.
definitely joining you guys soon.
Awesome, man. That'd be fun.
That would be so
Get
cool.
get that
Yeah.
Yeah, it would
kids
be so
class
fun.
back in.
Yeah.
Paul, did we meet at a Krav Maga seminar? Is that right? Did we ever
Um,
did we meet there or no?
it was with which instructor? I got mine with. Is that the one with the
Dindo?
tall guy?
Dindo Jesus.
Or,
He's like
I
from out of the
think
country. I imported that guy.
I oh I sort of had mine with my best friend.
Oh,
One of
okay.
the
Okay.
yeah, sort of like on a specific gym. One with sometimes Gino goes there for workout, so
Oh,
it's sort
nice.
of like that.
Okay.
It was just a brief one that we had because yeah, they had to sort of like close down the gym, COVID and stuff.
Oh, it's like a 101 kind of deal. Krav Maga is
Yeah,
pretty
they
interesting,
have.
man. I don't know how you can have a
Yeah,
competition of that though.
Yeah, it's deadly too.
I don't think
I don't
they.
think
It just they teach you how to efficiently eliminate people, right?
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's as fast as you can,
Yeah, it was
and with
invented by the Israelis,
the
so those people are efficient, man.
That's the great thing about sports like judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling is you get to do some of these, pretty aggressive things in a competitive environment where I don't know how you would do that with a Krav Maga style. That's not something that I don't know.
Yeah.
How many times you can get kicked in the balls.
for sure. It's more of like
You-
the primary thing is like grab the balls and like make
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, kick him in the ball, which makes a lot of sense. Why would you not want to do that?
But I heard,
the faster.
yeah.
yeah. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, it's just
Oh,
more
yeah.
efficient.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I heard Eddie Bravo made this competition or did this competition with jiu-jitsu that involves a little bit
Smoking weed, man.
of striking to make it more interesting or watchable, as
okay.
they've said, because a lot of people complain about the
Combat jiu-jitsu.
yeah, jiu-jitsu being not really that let's say exciting for viewing. I mean, on TV at least. If you're there, I heard it's excellent. But when you're watching it, especially if you don't understand it, like me, like I do, it's hard for me to follow it. So I'm interested to know if that's gonna be here locally here in Cagayan de Oro soon, or you guys have any plans for that?
combat like striking jujitsu
Striking
would
jujitsu, yeah, yeah, the thing from.
pretty
Yeah, it's like
interesting.
a slapping. Yeah, the
Mm.
Yeah.
slapping thing when you're on ground and sort of like stalling and trying to look for openings, and you just tend to slap.
He,
I don't know. I don't. How about you, Ben? Do you agree?
I think some of the rules are like there's no knees, there's no elbows. You only strike when you're on the floor,
I
and
see.
I think it's only takedowns, or is it? Do you strike on your feet? I don't think you strike on the feet. Yeah, I don't think you strike on the feet.
Yeah.
You strike when you're
It's
down.
more of the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Combat
It's when
jujitsu.
you're sort of like a 50-50 thing,
Mm.
50-50 kind of options that you have. Like it's like a stalling option. Like
Mm.
you know, the options like that. So they tend to put that so that it wouldn't have it has continuous movement
Mm.
with that in mind that there you can slap and stuff like that. Not really
Yeah.
strike. I think it's like an open palm.
I
Yeah,
see.
I think it's really interesting. I mean, Boss Rutan in Pancrase used to use an open hand when
Yeah,
he would
they have
strike.
that stance, right? The open
Yeah.
Yeah,
hand
it's
thing.
no joke.
It's
It's
more like for street fighting, like the open hand
the
thing that
open
they
hand.
do, right?
You won't break your hand,
Yeah.
which a lot of MMA fighters end up doing because the gloves are so small.
Mm.
So the open palm strikes, it's not like it's just a little tap on the head. You're getting full
Yeah.
strikes. So it's interesting in a lot of the positions where you might experience stalling. What actually happens when you bring in strikes? I think it's a great thing to practice and get to test in a competition
Mm.
stage, platform. So I think that's a if it did come if it's not already in Cagayan, hopefully it does.
Yeah. Or hopefully this pandemic ends soon, so you guys can
Can
go
actually
back to
practice.
promoting even the scene here
Yeah.
locally. Because yeah, Coach Papa was talking about taking some kids, right, to
Yeah, he has a program for
back in
the
the
Saturday
previous
class.
episodes, the previous podcast.
One of the YMCA programs that Popo had, right? Coach Popo had.
Yeah, the kids were going to the YMCA. Is that where it was kind of officially launched in YMCA?
Yeah, it's more of also with the sort of helping kids and then have giving them like scholarships or something like that.
Yeah, to be able to train
Mm.
or to go to school.
But that's a good start too.
It's great. It's a great program. It's free.
At least
People
even
can bring their kids and train.
grow the sport of jiu-jitsu here locally, and hopefully, because when do we reach that level? Like in maybe Brazil. Of course, that's the pinnacle, right? Do you think it'll ever happen here in the Philippines, in your opinion?
To be that popular. I
Yeah,
mean, it has a lot of potential to be.
you think so? Because we're more
Yeah,
like
Yeah,
yeah.
a boxing nation, but
yeah.
is it
It
growing?
just needs to be as popular as boxing, right?
I
And there's
see.
going to be a boxing gym. There are boxing gyms all over the place.
Yeah.
So eventually, you can get to that point where maybe it's 20 years from now.
Yeah, I hope it happens too
Just
because of
go to the
the
jujitsu
whole
place.
dangers of
Yeah.
the sport of boxing. A lot of people get the brain damage, CTE. So I
Oh,
heard jiu-jitsu
it would
is
be awesome.
has less of the impact
Oh
in
yeah.
regards to
Yeah,
your health.
if we sort of like we sort of advertise or sort of inform people that jiu-jitsu is not really much of the breaking thing
Yeah,
or
yeah.
the concept of the MMA. It's more of like the sport of
Mm,
trying to figure out like a puzzle. If it's shown that way, then it will be so good. Because what I know about boxing, well, I think they sort of banned from minors from playing it
mm.
because of one incident in Cagayan that killed a kid or something
Really?
Mm.
due to
That's
the impact of
unfortunate.
the head.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that I think it was noted nationally that minors, I think from the age 10 or 13 above can play
Mm.
sort of like that because it's more of the striking part. But jiu-jitsu is on another level though. It's more of not really on the striking, but it's more of the way I look at it. If you want to uh, explain it, it's more of wrestling
Mm.
than because jiu-jitsu is shown more from the MMA perspective. It's not shown on the gi or wrestling perspective of it that there's no there's no viol. I mean, it's more of the technique shown rather
Mm.
than how hard you can hit or how hard you can take it out and something like that. So
Mm.
I guess if it's shown that way and people would be exposed more of the jiu-jitsu sport like what we had the international program that I mean competition that we do, then I think it would be more, enticing for them, for parents, even for
Mhm.
parents to understand things.
Yeah, and for parents out there locally who are listening locally, yeah, we got a gym. Papa Ben here and Pao are into it. So if ever you're interested, just contact them. They'd be happy to accommodate you after the pandemic, of course.
Contact Popo.
Yeah, we're gonna contact coach.
Did you grow up around martial arts, Pao? Or is that how you got into it? Like, how did you were you introduced to it by somebody, or how'd you get into it?
Oh, yeah. When I was growing up, my uncle was a former military. At the same time,
Nice.
um, he was also a referee, an international referee.
Ooh.
He met Manny Pacquiao. Until now, they get to go get
Wow,
visit each other, Manny
Mm.
Pacquiao, and so with the other boxers, because he
that's
was
awesome.
a former international referee. I think he resides now in L.A. He stays in L.A.
Nice.
Nice.
So when I was growing up, like grade three, I think I started doing boxing, and then when I sort of knew that your nose would get flattened, I guess.
You saw the
It's
noses in
like,
the gym. You were like, I don't want a nose like that
yeah.
guy over there.
Yeah,
No way.
exactly. It's like, no, my nose is
Yeah.
big already. I don't want a flat one. So, um, he also introduced me to karate do. So
Nice.
I did few years in karate do and then stopped because I felt like I don't want to be like Daniel's son. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I find it very violent. I guess
Mm.
I just wanted to run if there's any problem or stuff like that. So
Sure.
Mm.
I was exposed to most of the martial arts like boxing, karate, and then arnis.
Nice.
So and then before he left for the states, he taught me as much as I can. I mean, as much as he gave me as much as his exposure of those martial arts. Then from there, I transitioned to taekwondo,
Mm.
Mm.
and then spent more of competing, I guess, during my high school days. Like I started competing from third year high school
Mm.
to fourth year until college for the uni games and taekwondo,
Nice.
and and sort of also a swimmer, I guess. I
Mm.
started swimming, so
All right.
all the sports physicalities, I really enjoy the physical part. I mean, the physical aspect of the sport. So I tend to enjoy competing
Mm.
from swimming to martial arts. But martial arts, I started very early, and then not really a black belt, but enjoy competing. I
Sure.
really enjoy competing for martial arts.
Did fatherhood ever change that? Like your pursuit of let's say excellence in martial arts?
Back then, I was thinking about wanting to be an actor of a Power Ranger
Yeah.
movie or a stunt guy.
I want to be the green one.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be the green one.
Tommy.
I wasn't really into like I want to be a black belt. I could
Yeah.
have a gym of my own. No, I was thinking about Power Rangers, Street
Yeah.
Fighter,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Mm.
Super Sentai or something like that. So that wasn't really into like I'll be having the highest honors or
Mm.
having that kind of no martial. Nah.
You got tired of the kata, didn't you? That's why you stopped.
Everybody
crying.
gets tired of the kata,
Hey,
man.
Yeah, nobody
you
likes
have to
doing kata.
memorize it. That's like
Yeah.
Kata one.
That's the nice thing about modern judos.
Yan Sudan.
The kata is not so emphasized. Like in the few years, the limited few years that I had exposure to judo,
Mm.
there was no kata ever. No test. We didn't have to practice kata.
Mm.
It was mostly about drills and then sparring time. It was like
Nice.
hour of drills, hour of sparring. So I think that's a good way to go about it. Like the kata could be a beneficial part. Like maybe it's like a moving meditation for some people. They memorize certain moves.
Mm.
oh
They
yeah,
can
yeah.
go. It's like yoga. 'Cause that's what yoga does. You can. There are styles of yoga, anyways, where you don't need an instructor to follow. You can memorize the moves, and then it becomes like a moving meditation. So
Mm.
I imagine, I never got into kata much, but I would imagine that it is some kind of moving meditation.
How involved is meditation in at least the martial art that you guys are practicing right now? Is it uh, heavily present? Let's say, do you like, as you said, meditation?
Oh, for you, Pal, how was the instructors or people that you trained with? Were they, talking about, you need to meditate, or, you know, come to a like a calm place? Like, was that, you know, taught, I guess?
When I was younger, I couldn't really picture out what they were saying, or what. All I knew was like, oh, this is a block, this is a punch, this is a kick.
Mm.
So
Mm,
as I grew older and sort of trying to understand that, that's why I'm not really into kata, or
Mm.
in taekwondo you have this pomse, you call it, that one. So because I tend to forget things, like, oh, that's the step two, that's a
sure,
step
sure,
three.
sure.
Why? So
The
I'm more
gun.
of the competing side. Yeah.
Mm.
So I was on the breaking of the wood,
Mm.
the thin wood, and or the I was on the just sparring, more of the sparring. I prefer, but the meditating part, I sort of tried understood it in the later part of
Mm.
martial arts. It's like when you try to compete, that's where the meditation comes. Like visualizing what will you do, what's your game plan,
Mm.
what's your first counter move, or what's your baiting move, something like that.
Mm.
During my
Mm,
taekwondo years, um what's how many minutes do I have, or the how do I slow down my heart rate, because during the competition
sure.
it's really fast.
Mm.
It's
Yeah, of
really
course.
intense.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
get to be so tired, even for just 2 minutes
yeah,
of straight kicking and then
yeah,
moving backwards and forwards. It's really intense.
Yeah.
You
It's a
tend to,
rush, right?
yeah.
like,
A
yeah, it's like a rush.
Yeah.
adrenaline
And
dump.
I
trying,
mean, just thinking about it,
exactly.
the last time I was competing, not in martial arts, at least in a serious competition, whether it's a team sport or individual sport that I participated before, but I remember the feeling of just when people are watching you and you have so many expectations, like, I gotta win, I gotta beat this guy, I want to beat this guy. I remember that drive before, but I've lost it. But when I was younger, I remember having that feeling, and it was intense, but at the same time it's good, right? I mean, should we remain that competitive at this stage in our lives? You guys think?
Probably on a evolutionary point, it probably decreases as you get. I think that's pretty
Mm.
common with most males, right? Like as you
Mm.
get older, the testosterone goes down,
Mm.
and so that would obviously influence your mood to exercise or do something physical.
Mm. Just to release it, at least
Yeah,
at this.
it's interesting. Like Pal, in your studies within the institution, like how was exercise kind of brought in as a topic of how it affects like the brain or the human or the mood or something like that? Was that a topic that was discussed?
Yeah, it's how you sort of, if correct me if I'm sort of out of the topic. It's the what I understood about sports and sports psychology is more of to understand your capacity, your goal, and to manage your body in
Hmm.
how you're going to perform, and how you perceive things during the competition, and how to calm yourself down.
Mm.
Some people, when they are so calm and doesn't have any, probably some of them might have uh, decreased performance.
Mm.
When they're so excited, some individuals perform better. It's more of the usual things that you tend to do during practice, or drills that you do,
Mm.
and also how you believe in, because from my experience, it's more of the rituals I do before competing any
Mm.
kind of competition. I'm pretty sure, Ben, you also have that kind of rituals, like the kind of food you try to eat,
Mm.
the
Yeah.
kind of diet that you
You
do,
don't
the
wash
kind
your
of
Yeah.
underwear, and don't take a bath for a week. That's a real tactic,
yeah, it's a sure win.
Yeah.
It's a win there.
You got to
It's
do whatever you
the
can,
kind of
whatever it
yeah.
takes.
It's like I gotta wear this specific brief because this one's a winner.
Yeah, sure.
This one's a winner, and the kind of food and the diet because back then until now even in jiu-jitsu it's more of the weighing, the losing weight part is still difficult,
Mm.
especially when you get older.
Yeah,
And
I grew up.
it's
I grew up playing baseball, and there's a lot of superstitions. Like when it's almost your turn to bat, you have to carry the same number of bats while you're warming up every single game. Or something like that. It's always
Is
there's
that a
always something.
long-standing tradition or just for your team's
I'm not
tradition?
sure. You have to eat sunflower seeds at a baseball
You
game,
have
and
to.
you can't help it, man. I don't know what it is. Something about a baseball game and sunflower seeds.
uh,
Got to do it.
whatever calms it down makes it comfortable. Like for me it's like trying to listen to music, not
Yeah,
you know
that was.
uh
I like the way it was put earlier. Was about managing yourself, and I think that's an interesting way to approach it. When how do I deal with all these different factors of who I am and what I have to deal with day to day, like for the studies within your study time, like what kind of stress management did you come to an understanding that it was effective as to deal with just everyday stress?
yeah, you can put it that way in a sense that you can use that kind of technique or that kind of management that in every day.
Yeah, was
So
there was there
what more
something
is
that they would speak on specifically? Like, is it the Wim Hof method, or is it's definitely meditation? It's definitely taking a walk. Like, was there a consensus within the institution that said that like this was a very effective way to handle stress?
it's it's more of meditation, and then
Mm.
the rest is more of the way you handle things on your own perspective, and how you got yourself into that, and sort of like the self management, because we do have different because I'm for me this is my perspective also. For me it's I don't want to label on things. I don't want to put things like, oh, you're put in a box, that one, because I know individuals are very different in special in their own way, that they tend to sort of perform better whatever they sort of believe. Like for instance, swimming. Uh, Back then during high school, the swimming belief was less hair. The more faster you go swim,
Ah,
sort of
is
like
that
that,
do you know it? You're
because
not.
you'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah,
For me, the
yeah,
longer my hair is, actually I did better. So it depends on the individual, but
yeah.
mostly if they believe that the less hair, the more hydrodynamic they are. So
Hydrodynamic.
Mm.
I guess yeah. So go ahead,
Yeah.
whatever makes you comfortable.
Mga
But
triathlete,
most
ano
Mm.
sila.
yeah, but the meditation part is constant in everything, anything that, especially in sports, because it's where also the stress is very high when you're competing. So the meditation part sort of gives it a balance
Mm.
and gives a better view of what you want to happen achieve. Although
Mm.
yeah, of course there
Visualizing
are
it. Mm.
expectations. Yeah, visualizing it and uh trying to understand what's your end goal and how you wanted it, but it's always the ideal imagination. It doesn't really go to that way. So most athletes would tend to put themselves in a very bad position. In jiu-jitsu we call it like, you put yourself in the worst situation to make yourself practice and make it instead of a disadvantage, made it to make it to your advantage. This is what you
Mm.
do
Mm.
to when I drill with Coach Ben. Like, oh, can you pull me up a triangle position already, about to submit, and then he get he escapes it and stuff, and transition it from his disadvantaged position to to an advantage. It's sort of
Mm,
like that. So it's more of the drills that you tend to. The meditation part is constant. It's because it's supposed to calm you down
mm,
and gives you a clear view or clear picture of what the situation or position you're into.
mm. So, in terms of competition, I'm focusing on that specific area of topic.
Psychology.
Yeah. Do you guys think we should focus on that aspect of competition, physical, mental, like martial arts, sports, maybe? Uh, we're witnessing now the rise of esports. Pretty sure you guys have heard about that. It's getting more and more popular.
It's a degree now.
Yeah, and a lot of kids follow it more than traditional sports. It's now called traditional sport. What the hell?
Selling out stadiums, man. What the
Selling out
hell
stadiums.
is that all
Yeah,
about? What the
yeah,
hell?
we're old, but I'm not
We're
trashing it.
all
I'm not trashing it. I understand. Yeah. All my
about that
nephews are
time,
into it.
yo.
They know all the teams. They know some of the set plays at least, how competition goes, and they're very competitive as well. They like competing with, and I think it's accelerating at a rate that it's bound maybe to overtake traditional sports. So I'd like to get your guys' opinion on that. Do you think we should at least consider maintaining the I hate to say the status quo, but at least that aspect of human activity, such as martial arts as a competition, sports, honing the our physical capabilities. What do you guys think?
You want to go
Uh,
first, Belle?
no, I'm thinking like I'm too
Oh
old
yeah.
for esports. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's happening,
I'm
and
gonna
maybe our
try to
kids are going to be
understand.
into it. So
Yeah.
who knows, right?
Yeah, I think regardless of what kind of competition it is, it's still going to be dependent on the performance of the human body,
Mm.
right? So if you optimize your human body, you can react faster as a gamer.
What if it becomes obsolete? Let's say we transition to uh, another reality,
Like
like in a VR world
like
in the future,
AI
an
or
AI, and nobody wants to leave
yeah,
that world,
we're
and we
all
will be
like
stuck
Iron
in it.
Man. We have a
Yeah.
computer
So,
implanted in our brain, right? That's what is
so,
going to happen.
so
That's
that
what
that
is
that
happening.
yeah, that begs the question. That's why I asked it, because it's happening. We're witnessing it right
Sure.
now. So, is it important to maintain that let's say part of our humanity, the spirit of competition? Like, how do we exceed the limits of our capabilities physically and mentally as well in this reality?
The way I look at it, the the word itself, sports, meaning it's still to compete. So regardless of so the matter here, it's more of what popularity, like mostly like the sports becomes more of the uh, virtual world rather
Mm,
than the physical world.
mm,
But the aspect of competitiveness and the aspect of competing itself is still
the same.
there. I mean, the competition, yeah, it's still there. Um, However, it's sad to say though. I mean,
Mm,
it's sad to hear like the physicality is gone because mostly humans, we tend to develop through the physical. I mean, the mental and physical. It's supposed to be working hand in hand, not just one aspect of your eyes and eye
mm,
hand coordination and then the strategy. It's more of like strategy and how you're gonna move yourself towards it. But like you can't really also stop, I guess, from
mm,
technology from we can't stop technology from evolving, and
mm.
so with the sports always evolve.
Evolving,
Like
yeah.
for instance, like there's wrestling, there's judo, and now eventually it becomes an Olympic if jiu-jitsu would be recognized from the Olympics. And it keeps on evolving from there. And so
Mm,
with the esports, it's now even recognized as a sports,
mm,
right? So
yeah.
you can't really stop that. The evolution, you can't really stop the evolution
Mm,
part. However, the competitive part, the
mm.
sports part of the competing part of it is still there.
It's essential.
So the
Mm,
management, yeah, the management is still the same. I believe.
mm,
I guess because I'm not really an esports, but the management of self is still there. The discipline is still there.
Mm.
It's just that a different kind of body part, I guess, is
Involved, huh?
maximized,
Mm.
yeah, or involved. So it's not really it's not really more of like in basketball. There's the hand, eye, and the movement coordination. It's more of now the mouse and the the eye
Mm,
coordination.
mm.
So it's more like that, or the joystick, or the
Yeah.
keyboard, or the Joy-Con, or whatever you call it. So it's more of a different body part that's
Mm.
utilized. But I guess we really couldn't stop it, so might as well try to evolve with it
Or why
in a
not both, right?
slow,
I mean,
yeah,
there are
in a slow
athletes
pace.
who are like extreme gamers, like
Mighty Mouse.
Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, huge
Who
gamer.
else? Adesanya. I know
Um,
he's a nerd,
Holloway.
basically.
Holloway is
Yeah.
a big gamer.
Holloway.
Yeah, yeah.
The new what's the lightest weight in UFC? Flyweight champion. The first
The female.
Mexican champion in the world. I forgot his name. Jesus Christ, he's a
Oh,
nerd too.
female.
Anyway, so yeah, why not both? You can practice, you can compete in esports, you can hone your skills here, but at the same time, it's important not to just easily let go of that of traditional sports or traditional arts that involves a lot of physical activities. It's a,
Whatever takes care of the body as a
true.
general,
Yeah, since
basically.
we're basically we're
Not
still
really.
here.
For now.
For now, yeah.
In the immediate time.
That I can
It
agree on.
won't. It won't take long until we're uploaded, man.
True.
If we're not already.
Yeah. Speaking of
It's like
which,
a matrix, man.
yeah,
It
simulation.
becomes
Do
the
you
battery.
personally believe in that, or at least subscribe to that idea?
Um, Eventually, I guess, but I don't think I'll be alive.
Yeah.
I mean, on that kind of era. But
Uh,
yeah, as we evolve, it's like that. Human beings, perhaps, we tend to have that kind of evolution, or maybe it's just because there's a lot of school of thought of it. I
mm,
mean, school of thought. Like
mm,
basically, it's that matrix thing. Like
mm,
eventually, the body becomes the battery, and everything will be like a
mm,
simulation. It's also, it could be a school of thought in a sense that everything in time is sort of a loop. Like we've already been through, I mean, we've been through that kind of era, but we just went back to the Stone Age to
mm,
Yeah.
go back to that kind of cycle or
mm.
in life.
The
So
multiverse.
To try and simulate
exactly.
that. So this could be it, right?
Yeah. So
Our future self simulating us.
yeah, could be like that. So it's because the life is still a mystery, I guess.
True.
Life is
Mm,
still a mystery, trying to understand. Even psychology, if
mm,
psychology in general is still a new science,
true.
despite it was made around
Not
the
so long ago, I
evolution
think.
of it. Yeah, and that's
Mm,
like it was sort of from philosophy,
mm.
and there's a lot of evolution of
Yeah,
philosophy,
philosophers have been asking that
biology,
question for thousands, I'm sure more than 1,000 years, back when the Greeks were still or classical Greek times. They were asking that question already, and then science just happens to have tools to test it out and not really necessarily prove that it's correct, but at least the possibility of it being true is floating out there. So
Higher or lower.
yeah, going back, because we touched on this subject a couple of episodes ago, like psychologically, how do we deal with that possibility, or how do we explain it to our kids? It's like, okay, don't know exactly
Get
what
him to watch
reality
Marvel
is.
movies,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, especially that
Star
they're
Wars
watching
and
Marvel
Marvel.
movies. Yeah, there's like there's multiple universes.
Yeah.
All we knew before was like there's only one world, or we were the center of the universe. It's not so long ago, and
Yeah.
now we keep on having these demotions.
My our daughter's in first grade, right? And I'm already having conversations
Mm.
with her about
You're starting to ask like
the
deep
multiverse.
questions,
I
right?
talked to her because she watched Loki.
Which is
You know,
beautiful, I think.
she's yeah, she's gonna be watching Doctor Strange
Mm.
coming up, and so she's really into it, man. She wants to like watch the Spider Verse, and so it's a mainstream. I don't know if I call it mainstream, but I mean it's a normal topic. It's not like
Mm.
it's not something out of this world.
sure, whatever. The more they think, the more
The
the
better.
brain grows.
Mm.
Yeah, the more they try to reason out things, the more they sort of
Imagine.
try to imagine or try to even understand the whole concept. It's
Sure.
the brain working. So
Mm.
Definitely.
whatever works for the brain to work. I mean, it's not really limiting them to. I mean, if they ask questions, go ahead. If you don't
Mm.
know the answer, just let them know. Like maybe, probably you would be
True.
the
Yeah, I
one
agree with
answering
that.
that for me. So it's not really the limiting part. It's more of the being afraid of the unknown. It's more of that
Or
question. Like, how do
exploring the
I?
unknown, right? Like letting your
Yeah.
mind even just consider some of the possibilities that yeah,
One thing
so
I was really
Uh,
curious about, Pal, is back going back to the institution. Are there professors actually teaching breathing techniques, like in the auditorium or wherever it is that classes sessions are held?
usually breathing techniques and meditations we used to. I mean, we use that in psychotherapy sessions. Like when we
Psychotherapy
do
sessions. Okay.
psychotherapy, yeah, when we do psychotherapy for let's just say um, for clients who's having, like, for example, an anxiety or diagnosed with anxiety problems
mm,
or
Hmm.
problems of any kind of problem, we tend to teach them how to the breathing part, the meditation part, and the thinking part. It's because I'm really into I'm my the school of thought that um, is my school of thought in psychotherapy is closer towards um, cognitive therapy. It's more of the thinking part,
mm,
where it's supposed to coordinate the thinking and the feeling. It's supposed to make sense, I guess, in layman's term. It's supposed to coordinate with how you think and how you feel and how you bring yourself. So it's more of like that. So one way to reach that kind of realization is to calm yourself down, and one way also to calm yourself down is to through breathing and meditation.
mm,
Hmm.
So you meditate, you breathe, you breathe in in a sense that you tend to stop the thinking and the feeling and go back and try to reset things. Just
mm,
like a computer, that's what I keep on explaining people. Like, just like a computer, when everything's working at the same time and your RAM couldn't figure out which one's first and it starts to hang,
mm.
our cell phone's like, oh my
In the
god,
middle
it's
of work.
crashing, it's hanging.
Loading,
Yeah,
loading.
so what you do is you tend to shut everything down and
Mm,
reset,
reset.
and then try to boot it up, and then try to start with the
Mm,
primary program or primary work that you
mm,
have. Like, for instance, the Word where you're starting to write, or the internet where you start to research. So
mm,
it's slowly on primary programs, and then gradually tend to load it up again, as much as you can, where you won't get confused. It's the reset part. It's rebooting. I call it
Hmm.
reboot. You tend to reboot through breathing exercises, through
Hmm.
um, meditation. Because
mm,
the meditation part is you stop everything, right? You stop everything and you focus your energy on one aspect of it. It could be through the stretching, could be through the breathing,
Hmm.
and it could be through mindfulness. We call it mindfulness. It
Okay.
means
mm,
to think about nothing,
Hmm.
or to think about the the environment. So
Hmm.
mindfulness is to think about
The very moment.
almost everything over nothing, and then the moment of it. Yeah.
Hmm.
So you tend
nothing.
to look at the trees. You tend to observe people. You tend to observe a lot of things, including your breathing. You tend to observe yourself, what makes you upset, where it hurts, where you sort of it's rebooting basically.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you tend to reboot yourself through that.
Yeah,
I'm
and it takes a lot of practice, right?
Yeah, go
You
ahead, man.
gotta rehearse it. Not rehearse necessarily rehearse it, but at least keep on reminding yourself like this is the process. This is what I need to do. Because most of the time when we're stressed out, we react with our usual habits. Like we get irritated or whatever. We some of us get anxious, Some are just maybe emotionally not in control anymore. So it's also it takes a lot of practice to do that, which I'm still trying. I mean, I do meditate, not all the time. That's why I keep forgetting. A lot of times I just breathe in, as you've said. It's a it really works. I mean, for me, it works wonders, especially when you're in the middle of an intense situation, like an argument with
Like
with your
delivery,
significant other. Yeah.
delivering a baby, right?
Or delivering the baby.
It's
Excuse me. Yeah,
intense.
it's intense. So you just have to remind yourself that yeah, as you said, it takes a lot of practice. That it's okay. It's part of the process. It's part of the experience. Take it in. I don't know what nothingness is, but uh, I imagine it as something, as you've said, like being aware, but at the same time aware that it's the environment. You're just part of this environment, and you just have to flow with it. I don't know, I haven't really mastered it. I'm still trying. I'm a novice basically.
Yeah,
That-
we're still newbies. I am curious, Pao, in how do you kind of translate that to in within the family setting? Like
Mm.
what you understand about stress management or managing yourself?
Uh, uh,
How do you bring that into that environment?
I'd say personally, it's hard, especially when it comes to family. It's only good for clients when you tend to, you go with your clients or have like a
Yeah.
session with clients. But
Not good for the
with
wife,
family, it's hard.
huh? You
The hard
analyzing me
part of it,
again?
it's more like that. Yeah,
That's
it's like
hilarious.
that because it's the feelings there is very intense. The feelings
Sure.
are sort of involved.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a
So
family.
there's
You can't help
the
it.
yeah there's biases there, and your feelings are very extreme. So what you can do is just really calm yourself down and find a way to put the flames out
Mm.
before you start talking. You might talk something or say something else.
Yeah.
I
The
mean, Ben, you look at it in a family. It's not just. I mean, personally, I'm. My mom is one of the clinical psychologists here in the Philippines.
Uh,
So one of the pioneers, also of forensic psych.
mm.
So we tend to.
nice.
It's more of like trying to psychoanalyze each other and try to deal with things, but it always ends up with your personal feelings. It's really hard, man. It's
It
yeah.
is.
It's
It's
like
just part of being human.
that's why yeah. So it's like a doctor couldn't be doing or trying to operate with his or her own relative because there's a
Mm.
lot of emotions
Mm,
going
emotions
through it,
Yeah.
involved.
and
Yeah.
you can't really yeah. So you can't really focus it. But what you can focus though is how to calm yourself down. Like
Mm.
when you're so having a heated argument, so before you say something bad or something like that you couldn't take it back, you tend to like, okay, let me think about it. That's
Yeah.
why I now understood. Before I was like, why won't they just engage in the argument and sort of confront? Now I
Mm.
tend to understand, like, okay, taking a step back is also um, it also works wonders, I guess,
Mm.
in some situations. Taking a step back and like try to rethink if you can do something about it or you can't do something about it.
Mm.
And especially with relationships within the family, you guys have um, you already have that kind of familiarity
Mm.
and assumptions. Like, oh God, she's gonna erupt again. Sometimes those assumptions are good
Mm.
and accurate. Sometimes those assumptions aren't accurate. So
Yeah.
it could be a lot of things like
I'm
assumptions like, oh, it's yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
sorry. I was gonna ask. I'm really curious to know if you've practiced timeout. Is that something that you tried or that you totally skipped out on?
Time out.
Timeout, just
Like,
like
what do you
putting the
guys
kid in the
like?
With the kids,
corner or in
huh?
a different room, just like as a form of, I guess the typical would be punishment, right? It's not like a good time when they're in timeout, but is that something that you kind of understood you didn't need to do, or did you end up going through that?
I tend to have that if because it doesn't work nowadays. I guess
Yeah,
because
yeah. I guess that's what I'm
as
curious
your
about.
kid, as soon as your kid grows a little, when they grow a little older, and it doesn't really the methods that you often use doesn't really work as much as before. I
Okay.
used to have the punishment of give me your hand, and I tend to spank an open hand. So it's like a high five, but it sort of gives a different
Like,
psychological
yeah,
effect,
yeah.
I
It's like a
guess.
solid hard
It
high
doesn't really
five.
hurt. Yeah, it's like a solid high five. But for the kid,
Sure, sure.
it's more of like, okay, that's the punishment. That's the punishment. So
Right.
it works
Yeah,
before,
yeah,
like
yeah. Sure, sure. Oh, yeah.
until grade one. During grade one, I did that kind of punishment, and she was like so crying, and she was crying hard and said, "It doesn't work anymore." She told me that. I was like laughing, like, "Oh, it doesn't. I'm sorry." I mean, that was an honest one, but yeah, I was thankful she was honest though. I was thankful my kid was honest. Like, doing that high five, hard high five.
Yeah.
And then she was crying because she knows she was punished. But at the same time, she was also honest, like, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't hurt. I was like, oh, God, I gotta put a different kind of punishment now. But as long as you get to have the point across and the meaning of it, even the act itself, then you know the, as long as the kid understands what they're like facing with, or the situation is, or try to explain why he or she is punished, then it's not. I mean, there's a lot of creative ways of punishing kids. It's not just. I'm not saying the belt doesn't work. It still works, but
Sure. Yeah.
nowadays
It's
they're
not
sort of like
encouraged.
smart,
Yeah,
man.
not
Yeah,
encouraged.
it could work for them. It couldn't work for. It depends on the individual. You have to know your kid
Mm.
better. You have to know your kid from ground up by spending more time with your kids, or sort of like that. So you have to know them. Like, for instance, like that situation. I sort of like, okay, she knows it was a punishment, but she
Mm.
knows also not to tell a lie. So she was honest about it, that it doesn't hurt anymore. It means it doesn't work. So you have to be creative again to have that kind of punishment. But the whole point was punishment with explanation. And you really have to have patience to or give time, not just patience, but give time to explain why there is that kind of punishment, or why that thing isn't encouraged.
Yeah.
And from there, it's easier to understand. Knowing the technology, also, it's easier also to understand. There's one of the pros and cons of technology. So the pros there is sort of, nowadays, since they're high tech, it's easier for them to understand how one should present it, and easier for them to understand what it meant. The cons, though, it's more of regulating part. Like, you tend to regulate it in a sense, like, for example, the dining part, the eating part, no technology during eating. Hard because it's the example part is hard. Like, I'm also guilty of having a phone while eating. So you can have that kind of example,
Sure.
right? So that's the hard part there, because you're also immersed with technology.
Yeah, we're a dying breed, man. The people that still remember 8-bit graphics. I mean, that's we're not going to be around
We're
much
on our way
longer.
out, halfway there at least.
I did want to get your take on your time outside of the Philippines, because that's always interesting to think about. Like, there are so many OFWs. I mean, how many? You said over like a million or something, right? Like,
I'm sure.
yeah, there's like over
somewhere.
OFWs are worldwide, right? And so you got to spend a little bit time abroad. Can you get into like how that happened a little bit? How long how
Oh
long of a
yeah.
portion of your life that was? And
During that time, I think it was during my college. I think it was around third year college or something,
okay.
and my dad wanted me to be there, so I sort of went there and then spent time with my dad, as my mom sort of doesn't really like going or living abroad. So basically, it's just my dad. So I went with my dad, lived with him for a couple of years there. Culture is very different. The time is very different.
Yeah.
The time is very different. Like, it's when you're in Cagayan or even in the Philippines, you tend to slack off rather.
Pinoy
Tend to
time.
slack
Is that
off,
where you say Pinoy
and
time?
yeah, the
Filipino
Filipino
time.
time. Yeah.
uh,
Filipino time.
I hate
You
it.
can't
I
have
hate it.
it outside. You can't have it outside because if it's sort of late, you tend to be uh, left by the bus or train that you're trying to. The train wouldn't stop for you or wait for you. So the modes of transportation is very different. Like, you know, the subway wouldn't wait for you. The time wouldn't. I mean, the bus stops wouldn't wait for you. There's a specific clockwork that they follow, and once you're late, it's already late. So
Yeah.
like that. Unlike here, you can like catch up and it's like, oh, it's still 5 minutes out,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. No
You can
way.
still
No
have
way.
time.
It's like that, at
I
least
don't think so.
in the
And then
US. I mean, at least in California, if you're on time, you're already late. That's what they would say. That's what they teach you
yeah,
On time.
in high school. You already know that.
and yeah, for real. And then also my experience there was not only the time the when you tend to go out with your friends is very different. You tend to book it for at least a month, a very least of a month. Like, okay, this is the specific date and time, and then this is where we're going to. Like, for instance, watching movies, we tend to schedule it like a month ahead, or yeah, at least a month
Right.
ahead. Like,
Mm.
we're gonna meet up at this one at this time, and then we're gonna watch the movie, and
It's
it
very
ends at this
organized.
time. Yeah, it's something like that,
Everything's on time, man. It's
right?
crazy.
Everything should be specifically, because
Yeah.
if not, then you'd be like spending, waiting for a bus, or
Right.
spending time commuting, because the subway there, like, I
Sleeping on the
remember
bus.
visiting my friend. Yeah, I remember visiting my friend. It was like a subway from end to end. So
Damn.
we live around the middle part of the city in Toronto, and then my friend was living on the east end, the very
Mm.
end east end of the subway. So I tend to ride the subway for an hour and a half just to get and visit
That's a
and
long
spend
ride, man.
an hour or
Yeah.
two for my friend. So I tend to I sort of like imagine, like, I'd go to Iligan just to see my
Just,
friend and then come back after an hour or so. It's like that. The distance is like that.
mm.
So sometimes we take overnights or sleepovers.
Hmm.
So sleep at the basement, sleep at the couch,
Did you meet a lot of
and
Pinoys over there abroad?
yeah, yeah,
Nice.
I did.
You're
Mostly
bound
I
to
stick
see any
with
Filipino
Yeah, we're everywhere, bro.
wherever you
yeah,
are in the world.
We're
exactly.
everywhere.
So I spend time mostly on Visaya Filipino.
Nice.
Visaya.
Nice.
Yeah. So you get to see them in Chinatown where the food is good,
At
and
the
the food
gambling
there is
casino.
so basically it's you don't miss the food, because there's those are, as long as you get to find rice, so
Night
you're all
Jollibee,
good.
bye.
Jollibee, stuff like
Yeah.
that. We hang out usually at Pho on
Oh,
one free.
pho.
It's
Nice.
like a noodle place. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
dude.
that's
Pho
where
is
I sort
awesome.
of learned how to
Gigantic ball
eat
of pho.
pho.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a Vietnamese food. So
Hell yeah, it is.
noodles rather. So that's where we hang out. It's cheap. You get full. So
So your time over there
that's where we hang
was
out.
like a mixed plate kind of scene, huh? It wasn't just Canadians. You had like a variety of Asians within the scene where you were.
Yeah, yeah. It was more of a mix. It's sort of not really a Canadian thing, because I've been
Yeah.
spending more time with Filipinos.
Nice. Okay.
I have like friends with different cultures, but really not that close. Even with fellow Filipinos, I spend time with more of the Chinese and the Bisaya ones,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
because my boss was a Chinese, so it's like, oh,
Oh, okay. Of course.
I know my I know Paulo. He couldn't really eat food without rice, so he ordered rice for me. So it's
Extra,
like, oh
extra,
yeah,
motherfucker.
yeah. So it's like extra rice for me and stuff
Double
like that. So
extra. You got that only rice, bro?
If you are with a Filipino, just order extra rice. That's
Keep
the
that.
stereotype.
Yeah, keep that sticky rice
yeah,
coming.
mostly yeah. I spent that because it's easier to have the kind of culture. I mean, try to adjust. Like for instance,
Mhm.
I have friends like Japanese, I Chinese, Japanese, and Koreans, but
Did
mostly Filipinos. So
did
it's really well. What? Yes, Ben.
sorry. Did you find yourself explaining like what is it? What is it being a Filipino like, or did you ever have to explain that to a person? Like, what is it like to be Filipino, or what is it like in the Philippines?
Um, not really, because they thought I was local.
Oh, really? Okay, okay. Because
Yeah, I was
Toronto is
like, I'm
that
a fob.
mixed. Yeah,
Yeah. So
you fit in
I was saying
anywhere.
yeah. So I was telling them like I'm a fob. Like
Yeah. Oh,
you know what fob means?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
fob
sure,
means
sure.
Fresh up,
fresh out of the
fresh
boat.
out of the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was telling them I'm a fob. It's like nobody believes you. Like no man, you're a local. It's
You're
like
a
no,
local.
I'm a fob. I mean,
Yeah.
look at me. I don't dress well. It's like no, dude, you just dress fine. Like you know. Something like that. You're one of the locals, so they can't find any accent. I guess. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mm.
I'm used to speaking. So uh, if you're a fob, then you have that accent. Like, what accent are you talking about? It's like the F and the P's. It's like, oh, you want me to pretend and have that accent? So fine, no problem.
Well,
I can do that. Stuff like that. So it's funny because they've always viewed me as a local. I was like,
okay.
no, I'm a fob. I'm sort of new here. I'm a noob or something like that. So what else?
Your time
There
abroad.
was this funny.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There was this funny experience. I was with my cousin, and we were in a club. We were
Yeah.
invited by we were in a club, a small club, and then this white dude, this Caucasian dude. Sorry for that term, white dude.
No
This
worries.
Caucasian,
We know what you mean.
this this Caucasian dude was saying, "Oh man, you guys are from the Philippines. You know what? From the south in Mindanao, they ate people there. Like we were laughing because we were from Mindanao." He's like, "Yeah."
He
It's like
said
we
that?
were
Is he
reinforcing
serious?
it.
Oh my
Yeah. So
god.
like there,
Maybe the
because I
occasional
think the
dogs.
news.
Did you
Yeah,
growl your
because
teeth at him
they
like? "Grrr."
no, because during that time there was this incident of Abu Sayyaf beheading
Mm.
people. During
Oh
that time, I
Jesus!
was around 2000s or I guess
Mm.
or in the 90s. Anyway,
Wow.
it was in the 2000s. So it was like, oh, they chop their heads off and they sort of eat people there in Mindanao. It's like me and my
Oh,
cousin was like
oh
laughing
my
out
god!
loud.
That's
Yeah.
We were
hilarious.
so I mean, we were so we really felt. I mean, he was so serious and drunk also at the
Yeah.
same time. So it was like serious and drunk. So we were
I would have
laughing.
just laughed. That
We
that
were
doesn't sound. I
like,
was like, that guy must be joking. That's so outrageous. Like that's
Yeah.
so silly.
exactly. So it's like we sort of like reinforce his ideas. Like, yeah, for real. Like they eat
Yeah, we
people there,
totally.
Each people
man.
there. Yeah, we do have a reputation here in
Oh,
Mindanao, right?
Like I ate this
yeah.
guy's
So
leg once. Yeah, it was awesome. Tasted
Uh,
so good.
it's funny
we
though.
were laughing at
I
him because
marinated
we
that
know the
calf.
truth. So it was so funny. It was like me and my cousin's like, for real, dog. You really
Wow.
believe the people in Mindanao eat like a yeah, for
Yeah.
sure they do, man.
Yeah,
They
for
chop
sure.
their heads off.
He was
Yeah,
sure of it, huh?
for
Oh
those
uh,
who
my
don't know
god.
or listening from outside of the country, we're basically the rednecks of the Philippines.
That's that.
we're from down south.
But,
Down south.
Yeah, we're from down south.
It's a lawless place,
Oh.
man.
It's like the guys that don't. I mean, their imagination is sort of like a Vietnam with no
I see.
lights on and no
Yeah, yeah.
cities.
yeah.
Like we were laughing because we have club. I mean, back in the days, we already have clubs in Cagayan, right?
Oh yeah.
We have buildings. We have everything actually in Cagayan.
Oh
It's
yeah.
a growing place.
Absolutely.
So So it was funny and ridiculous to hear him say that it was like a Vietnam
Yeah.
setting, and it was sort of like, what, for
Yeah.
real, dog? But,
Yeah, we use wheels, people. We
Yeah.
don't carry our shit around in our backpacks, climbing
Yeah,
mountains.
yeah.
we live in the trees still, yo. We look at a bunch of tree houses. You ever seen that
Yeah, we
Avatar? That
had
shit
those.
was about that was about us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's always that
it
perception
was
of you.
funny.
What the fuck?
Imagine that, it was like 2000s. It wasn't even the 90s. It was like 2000s.
Yeah,
Like,
2000,
and
yeah.
that's
really?
a
Like,
shame.
that's how you.
I mean, the country has such a rich culture. I mean,
Yeah.
we had our own beliefs, just like pagans. We had gods from
Yeah.
all kinds and
The Philippines has
princes, and
a rich history,
we got
man,
a
and
empire.
sad that not a lot of kids like appreciate the like how rich the history of of this nation is. Even the people, like the Babaylans, we talked about
Yeah,
it
we.
last season. Like it's heavily, let's say, it's a feminine aspect of the culture. The Babaylans were basically the shamans back in the day. when
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so they were well respected.
These days, it's
Yeah,
us.
they
We're the
were like
shaman. We
the
eat
sages
people.
of that time. And when
Yeah.
the Spaniards came, basically we afterwards we just treated our women like shit. Afterwards, like looked down to like just some.
Yeah. Wiped out the culture itself.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to that. But I think there's still a part of us that retain that aspect of the culture. I mean, considering in the Philippines, we're very open here. Uh, we have two women presidents in our history. America has none.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's very true.
for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
if since anime and manga is very popular in the Philippines, I mean, we have a great storyline. I was even happy when Trese came out. It was
Yeah.
like, oh man, such a reputation. I mean, representation here. Like, we have this kind of rich stories that we
Yeah.
have,
The
rich
folklore,
themes
right?
that we tend to. Yeah. So it's such it's sad to see not utilized. I mean,
But Tresse is
the
a good
whole
start.
concept of
I
it.
love that anime. I haven't read the comic books though, but
Yeah,
I've seen some of the
yeah.
episodes. It was really good. Well done.
On that note, pal, and within your household, do you mind sharing it whether or not you speak Bisaya to within the household? Is that something you specifically don't practice, or you specifically do practice? I'm just curious.
Oh, now with the kids around, like my nephews and my own kid, it's all English,
It's all
basically.
English, yeah.
Yeah, so Bisaya is sort of like a word thing. So that's why kids nowadays, I tell you guys, kids nowadays are having a hard time with the subject Filipino.
Filipino. Let me guess. They're flunking Filipino, right?
Yeah,
They're flunking
yeah,
Filipinos as we
exactly.
speak.
like, like my daughter, like, cause my daughter is like half Chinese. Like,
Uh,
oh, Chinese is even easier than Tagalog. It's like, oh my
Oh,
god,
really?
really
are
Really?
hard to
you?
believe.
Yeah.
Wow.
So for her, she's really having a hard times, and ironically, at home, my mom. I mean, at home we speak Tagalog, not even Bisaya. We speak Tagalog, but still,
Hmm.
she's having a hard time um, doing her Tagalog. English, it's very easy. That's why I was wondering, like, for people who, or for countries who employ Filipinos, that they have to have this kind of requirement of TOEFL, IELTS, something like that.
Hmm.
It's very surprising because the mode of language in our universities or even college or in instructions manuals and stuff, it's
Hmm.
all in English.
In
It's
English,
not
of
Wow.
even in
course.
Tagalog. I don't. Yeah, even in Google, I get pissed off when they say, "Why is it translated in Tagalog?"
Tagalog, yeah, it
I
was
couldn't even
switch it to English back, right?
Huh.
yeah, exactly. For most Filipinos, I doubt it if they read it in Filipino.
Is
They
that a
switch it in
tragedy?
Tagalog.
What do you guys think? I mean, is it a negative that we find it difficult to learn uh, the language, Tagalog to be specific? Our kids are having a hard time. I mean, in our time, I remember even just by watching a lot of Filipino movies, it helped me a lot. I'm not a master in speaking Tagalog, but I can at least converse comfortably with using it. But kids nowadays, like, are having a really difficult time with it, and I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not sure since we're globalized now, basically, and most of us aspire to leave this country. So, so
Yeah, I would expand on that a little bit, and yeah, I'd be curious to know, Pal. Like, was that a conscious decision within the household to be speaking primarily English, or is there like an understanding universally, like they're going to have more economical opportunities if they only speak English? Like, what was the approach there?
The English part was the only way, I guess. The way I look at it was the only way to communicate with in general. Just like our household is very weird because not only we speak in Tagalog, we speak a little of Ilonggo, we speak a little of
Mm,
Bisaya, and so on with the
okay,
other dialects. So
okay.
for us to have such a common ground was just to speak English basically. And most of us here at home are educators.
mm,
So
Mm,
our like my mom's a professor in psychology. I
right.
had time also teaching psychology, and the mode of language in
mm,
universities are in English.
Mm,
So basically are in English. So the it's very I mean, it's not just a common language that we speak, but it makes us comfortable since
mm.
we've been doing it
It's
for quite some
easier
time.
to
At this,
convey the
yeah, it's
message in
easier
English, right?
in English. Yeah,
well,
especially for Bisaya,
Mm.
yeah.
because
What
most
is the
yeah.
difficult part about Bisaya? Like, why is that? Why wouldn't Bisaya be the preference? I'm just curious because I have no idea what it's like to grow up here.
Hmm.
Okay, the Bisaya part is it's not really difficult, but rather I'm gonna speak, I guess, in my I mean, how I perceive things in the Philippines in general, because most of us are not really natively speaking. I mean, there's a lot of dialects. We don't even call it dialects. There was this professor who explained
Mm.
it to me that
It's a
it's not
language.
a dialect,
Oh.
but rather it's a different language.
Yeah.
When you say it's dialect,
Mm,
you're speaking the
yeah.
same language with a different kind of tone, a
Mm,
different kind of, slight differences of tone and slight differences of words.
mm,
But in the Philippines, it's a totally different thing.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I
And we
mean,
have more than 100.
it's yeah, exactly. We have tons of them.
Mm.
We have 100 plus, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
something
not
in that range.
dialect. It's already a different language. For instance, rice in the Philippines. In Tagalog, I mean in English it's rice. In Tagalog it's kanin. In
Mm.
Bisaya it's humay.
Humay or
Oh
kanon.
my.
And then
Kanin
yeah,
sa
or
homay.
kanon, something like that.
Okay.
Oh yeah, exactly. So but in some language in the Philippines, in the Philippines, they call it nasi.
Mm.
Nasi is also
Jesus.
rice.
Nasi. Oh
And
really?
then
Okay, I haven't heard that one.
nasi, yeah, nasi
Nasi.
is rice in Indonesia. But we
Mm.
have a dialect that uses that kind of word. That's why we call it nasi goreng in Indonesia or Malaysia, fried rice, nasi goreng. But we
Mm.
have nasi or locals using nasi as rice. So Philippines is
Nasi.
really
Mm.
not a really a melting pot, and it's really a different. It's a lot of languages already within one country. It's
Yeah.
not just a dialect. Where a dialect, I would consider a dialect as Cebuano Bisaya, Cagayan
Mm. Yeah,
Bisaya,
yeah.
Davao Bisaya.
Okay.
That
Sure.
you can
Yeah,
That
yeah.
understand,
makes
right?
True.
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, a Boholano Bisaya, a
Mm.
different tone, but I understand you. It's just
Mm,
that you're coming from Bohol, so you have the kind of different tone or
mm.
different kind of way of saying it.
Yeah,
Now
but
that's what you call a dialect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
but if you say
Kapampangan is like
Bisaya and
far
yeah,
out, man. Because my dad is from Pampanga, and it's like I can understand a few words. That's about it. But when I speak, it's like, all right, I'm lost. That's exactly how different it is,
Mm.
and it's weird, but in a way, I'm not surprised why we're so divided as a nation, and because we have this sort of identity crisis, being what it means to be a Filipino.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, I'm Visaya, so there's a lot of identities that you have to identify me with. Like me, I'm Tagalog half, half Bisaya, whatever.
Yeah,
Jesus
like
Christ! It's
that.
like, okay, where the fuck do I be? Where the hell do I belong?
Exactly.
So we're confused from the get go. And
Uh,
how do we instill
yeah.
that sense of? Although I wouldn't really subscribe to being patriotic, but at least that sense of identity as a nation, and for our kids even not to be involved with at least the main language, our national language is Tagalog, is sort of sad. At the same time, it's not necessary that they master it, but at least the basics of it, or appreciating where how we came to be as a people. And because as an individual, it makes you understand, like, okay, I know why I'm basically like this. I came from different cultures, and this is why, and this is how. And to appreciate that is gives you a sense of at least appreciation, not just for your culture, but as the individual. Like, okay, I'm comfortable being this way. A mutt, basically.
Yeah, it's having that kind of identity.
Mm,
But like I said, from the very beginning, it's really hard because most of I mean, I wouldn't consider it as dialect. Like I explained earlier, like the dialects are understandable in different kinds of tones,
mm,
but the language is now like it's comparison of Bisaya and Tagalog. So it's really far off, right?
yeah, yeah.
No commonality there, and even if it's common, it's interpreted in a different way. Like, for instance, langgam. What is langgam in
Langgam.
Bisaya and what is langgam in
Yeah, in
Tagalog?
Tagalog.
That itself, one word is
Yeah, I
different
always
meaning
joke with
or
that.
has
Like,
a different
how
meaning.
if you wanna
What is that?
if you wanna, yeah, exactly. If you wanna know, if you're around people, that's like there's 50 people in the room. You wanna know, who's Bisaya or who's
Uh,
Tagalog?
yeah.
Just shout langgam,
And then
and everyone, all the people who stare up are,
Tagalog.
uh,
The Tagalog.
they're Bisaya.
Oh, okay.
Because
No, they're
langgam
Bisaya.
is
It's
Bisaya.
a bird.
Langgam
Ah.
in Tagalog are ants. So they look down. It's like
And so you
langgam.
have to look down.
So that's how you that's how you distinguish easily the best way.
Yeah, just like my time in just like my time in Toronto, like when I spent time with my cousin, and then my cousin was telling me like I don't need to study Filipino because we speak Filipino every day at home.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So when she went to the class, like the Filipino class that they had
Uh-huh.
in Toronto, it's like I couldn't understand anybody there. She
Yeah,
told
yeah.
me like
Mm.
nobody understood me
Yeah.
because the Filipino was taught in Tagalog and the language we spoke at home was Visaya. So
Ah.
that's itself, right?
Yeah.
So she was so confident, like I don't need to study because I speak it. I mean, we talk in Filipino at home,
It's a
but she
different kind of
forgot.
Filipino.
Yeah, it's Bisaya
It's the
that they
crude
were.
one. Yeah, Visaya is actually, it sounds very crude if I compare it with Tagalog. Tagalog has this like a certain flow to it that sounds just so, I don't know, it's beautiful. I'm not saying Visaya it sounds terrible. I like it. I'm comfortable with it. Like when I speak it, it's like it's very natural. That's my natural dialect or language that I speak. That I'm very comfortable with. But when I compare it to Tagalog, there's certain flow to Tagalog that's beautiful. That's why I find it sad that I didn't really find time to at least master it in a way that I can be fluent with it, that I can express myself uh, better.
In Bisaya, do you guys have like a favorite expression or
Yawa.
Yeah. I hear that one a lot. Yeah. Yeah, what bilat?
Bilat yawa. Sorry, kids, if you're listening.
I don't even know what that
Yeah,
means.
sorry.
There was a post the
Yeah,
other day that Yawa apparently was some kind of a goddess. Did you guys hear about that or read about that?
yeah,
Ah,
Is
yeah.
that
interesting.
Tinood mo na? Or that's it?
Yahweh, I know,
Yeah,
Yahweh.
is
Now
another
that's
name for God.
interesting.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
why
Is
do we
it?
curse if we
Or,
say Yahweh? Why is it a curse word? What's
oh,
the
I don't know. I heard like an explanation of that, I guess, because sort of. I don't know if it's true, but I read it somewhere that Yahweh was sort of like a pagan god, one of those
I
Yeah,
see.
something.
demigods and something like that. So in order for Christians to discourage such,
Yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah,
Christians to
yeah.
discourage such, they
Corruption,
made
The
it
yeah.
as like the taboo word for it.
mm,
But it's one of the demigods of something. Could be evil, could be like
yeah,
mayhem or
could be
something,
benevolent,
but
benevolent,
yeah, yeah, something like
whichever.
that.
But
But to compare it and make it discouragement, so they made it like, oh, if you speak that, it's
it's gonna bring you
a
misfortune or
bad
something.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's a bad word. So I think that's one of the I guess strategies of Roman Catholic conquering the tribes.
Yeah. They had a good
It's
strategy
possible. I'm
though.
not.
It worked. I mean, obviously, not just with us, with
Yeah,
Mexico, with other nations that Spain and Portugal were fucking around back in the day.
You mean it's still
for
working,
real,
right?
for
It's still
real.
Yeah,
working.
still working.
Yeah, it's ingrained. It's
Mm.
ingrained.
Which is there are beautiful aspects to it. I believe, in my opinion, there in a way because we're already here, right? We can't change that in our identity. It's already here. Whatever the Spaniards did. And I'd like to think that I can always find the positive things of that culture and the old ways and carry it with me, whatever those positive things or even the negatives, I can learn from it. So I'm not too dismissive of any of both aspects of the culture. I like to learn from it. That's why I like learning about history, not just our history, but the history of Spain, the world, because it connects me back to where we actually came from. Which, if we trace it back, the African from the African migration, and back, they're the original ones. Back in the day, man, we just walked from Africa. It came all the way
Yeah.
there. So, so yeah, it connects us all. But it's not so bad to at least learn about that. So at least it would give you that perspective. So being part Spaniards and Filipinos, of course, that's why it's hard to say Filipino because a lot of Filipinos find issue with that since we were named after our king at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't find anything terrible about it. Some people would suggest we should be called Maharlika again. I don't know. I'm comfortable with this Filipino thing. Just run with it.
Yeah. So do you feel about that like the number of languages kind of like it just makes English more of like the default
Mm, could be.
language to go to within the household these days, or do you think
For
eventually
sure, for sure.
yeah.
Mhm. For sure. The language, English language is very, it's, I mean, aside from making it comfortable or making it as a practice at home, it's nice to use it as a language for
Mm,
us to be comfortable in employment,
mm,
to compete globally,
mm,
and to do things in a bigger scale.
mm,
However, there's a however. However, it's also nice to encourage the kids not only to use English but to also not not to disregard, but rather to encourage them to learn different
mm.
languages. It could be Bisaya, Tagalog,
Tagalog.
or Chinese, or even Chinese.
Mm, mm,
Or Mandarin, or
mm-hmm.
Hokkien,
Mm,
or Cantonese. All kinds of language could be French or German. It's nice for them to also learn that. Not,
Mm-hmm.
mm,
it's not just,
Definitely.
you're limited to stick to this and that, but rather you want to learn that, go ahead, whatever you're, and then give them an opportunity to engage on it. Like, for instance, Chinese. I'm not pro Chinese. I'm not against Chinese, or with them or
mm,
against them, because I'm not a Chinese myself. So I like to encourage that to my kid. It's because if there are opportunities that you tend to
mm.
speak in Mandarin or do business in
More opportunities.
Mandarin,
Yeah.
exactly,
Mm,
it doesn't hinder you or stop
yeah.
you from exploring things. So it could be French.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead, if you want to learn French, then you'd be going to places where French is. French language is used, then and engage on it, and
Yeah.
you won't be limited to such. So with
Yeah.
Bisaya and Tagalog, go ahead. I mean, but like I said, it needs to have a common ground, and then most education. I mean, our education system uses English as a
English.
mode of.
Yeah. So for now,
Yeah,
it's the primary
it's yeah.
language that we use in our schools at work.
Mhm.
True.
I think it's a great
Yeah,
thing, regardless of what you use in the household. The average Filipino is going to be multilingual,
Yeah.
right? That's definitely
Definitely.
yeah.
something I
Yeah.
did not get
I
when I
mean,
was
you
growing up in
learned
California.
Visaya while you were
Well,
here.
not
Pretty
while I was
fast
growing
too.
up. You guys learn multiple things throughout
Hmm.
your entire education, whereas I only learned English up into my adulthood. I don't,
Because in America, so they don't really encourage you to learn
you
multiple.
might spend 2 years
I
learning
see.
a different
Yeah.
language. Maybe it's French, maybe it's Spanish.
Mm,
Those are the typical ones that were available to us at my time. But it's not like here where it's regular to learn Tagalog,
yeah.
English, some other
At least three
language.
here.
Yeah,
At
at least
least
three
three.
languages,
Especially if you live here in the
right?
South.
Like in your
You got to learn
household,
Tagalog. Yeah.
yeah, English, Pampanga, and
Mm,
Tagalog, right? Like, so it's a great thing, I think, to be able to raise a family within that kind of environment where
yeah.
that's like a normal thing.
Yeah. But
That's
here's
a,
my 10 cents though.
uh
Not far, not too far away, or not too far in the future. I don't think kids are gonna, or I don't think kids need to learn multiple language anymore.
No, they're just gonna think about stuff and like be able to communicate it.
It's just gonna translate
Yeah, it's just gonna.
instantaneously. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that's
Uh,
the direction that we're
it's
headed.
the promise of
But it's still
Maryland.
good that we teach them multiple languages. I would still encourage my child to at least learn another language, whether it be Spanish or another dialect, Tagalog language. So I'm sorry, but not so far in the future. They don't need to. It's like we already have instant translators now in our
Mhm.
phones.
Yeah,
What's going to
into a
happen
different
is, yeah,
language, you can do that. Yeah.
if we're going to have this AR thing, and then this headset that's constantly in our ear, that every time you speak or whoever you're talking to, it's just going to translate instantaneously, and you don't have to learn the language. It's just
Mhm.
going to tell you in your own local
Give you
understanding,
feedback
whatever the
somehow.
message is.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
my,
but that's gonna be sad for the Filipinos.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be sad.
Sad for Filipino.
Why
Why?
is that?
Because the sad part of it is our internet is so damn
It's so
slow
damn
for
slow,
the
man.
slowest.
It'll take you 5 minutes to respond.
Exactly.
uh,
Filipinos are so lagging. Why? They can respond right away. It's like, yeah, it's our internet.
Yeah, in our house, it seems like the signal is still stuck at 3G or something.
well, you should
Exactly, man.
take a look at those wires out there on the street. My goodness, no wonder our internet
Uh,
is so slow. There's probably all kinds of feedback going on. It's like a tourist attraction. When I've heard when people's families come from America or somewhere outside and they see the wire mess here in Cagayan, they like take pictures, like take a
Oh yeah,
selfie
it's
with
a
a.
spider web.
Yeah, it's
There's
ridiculous.
a big spider. Yeah.
Such a big problem with why utilities was privatized here in the
yeah.
Philippines. Becomes a huge mess.
It's really like I said, there's pros and cons in it, but the problem if you put it on a government side, it's really susceptible for corruption. On the
True.
other hand, if it's privatized, it's gonna be monopolized or cartel or something like that. So
Mm,
basically, it's very hard either way to have it improved.
All I want is that for that ugly nest of wires to go away. There's got to be
yeah.
standardized of some kind, right? Like, geez. That was a nice thing about seeing Marawi. Man, there was so clean.
Mm,
When you look up at the sky, you don't see a single
yeah.
wire line. It's great. It's like refreshing.
Yeah. It's cold too.
Yeah.
Like you got
Yeah,
a good breeze
self
there.
trees.
Yeah, still
Yeah.
trees. Here in the city, it's kind of hard. It's not really that hard. You can always go to Malasag to at least get close to nature, but I find it more and more that the city is encroaching more and more to the rural parts of the city, so it's getting farther nowadays.
For
So
real. I
yeah,
mean, it's we're losing trees. Like for
mm,
instance, there's gonna be like a lot of buildings. Eventually, it's gonna be a lot of buildings,
mm,
condominiums, and we're expanding, going upwards, right? On the up, we call that uptown.
uptown. Yeah.
There's a lot of expansion doing. I mean, done in uptown because downtown's already been
Occupied,
already
yeah,
been,
heavily
yes.
populated. Yeah.
Going
Uh,
back to the your time during your studies about it, did the topic, how big of a topic was memory? I'm just curious.
Memory. Um, it not there's no specific part in, because what we have in school, about in school is more of like the disorders, and the kind of um psychological disorders, and the therapies that we're doing, and the techniques and the ethics and so on and so forth, with the specific education part of it. But memory, what we had in memory was more of general, like for instance, memory of um, victims, um, memory of this kind of disorder and that kind of
Mm,
disorder. However,
okay.
memories, so like you have to like be specific in what kind of memory are we talking about in what
Mm,
situation. But in
okay.
general, like memories, like for instance, what I teach in at Xavier, like memories always have this, it's like building a wall,
Hmm.
and there's little gaps of it at some point, and as
Hmm.
if you don't practice such, if you don't use those kind of path, it's like gonna close up. So it's like a path that if we keep on practicing it, if we keep on um, visiting in that specific part of the memory, or try to use what do you call that? Use tools for the memory to get sharper, and stuff like that. So that's how we're gonna improve memory. Like for instance, an example of it is what old people should do crosswords
Hmm.
Mm.
or crossword puzzle.
Why is that?
Why people should, yeah, because the more you get to use it, the older we are, or we get, the more experience that we have, right? But
Mm-hmm.
then again, we don't
Hopefully.
use all of it. We don't use all of it, so we tend to. It's like a muscle. If you
Okay.
don't exercise it, it
Sure.
doesn't really grow, or doesn't
Mm.
really get get healthy,
Mm. Memory
or
can be trained, right?
Hmm.
Mm.
exactly. So it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it will be,
Hmm.
it will die down, or it will limp, or
Yeah.
Mm.
What
it
was kind
wouldn't
of
be as functional.
sorry. What was kind of the
Yeah, yeah.
understanding of what the underlying cause of something like Alzheimer's is? During these studies, presentations. I mean, like,
Okay.
what was the general understanding?
What I know about Alzheimer's is just basically it's a degenerative disease.
Mm.
So it's prone to, as you grow old, and you tend to have it. Other factors that might cause Alzheimer's is not just the practicing of memory, but other factors like kind of diet that you have,
Mm-hmm.
environmental factors, and the
Right.
kind of
Right.
experiences that you have also.
Mm.
That makes sense.
So um, uh, these things are sped up through how we take care of our body.
Uh
If we
huh.
don't take care of our body, then the chances of speeding things up would be faster. The rate of it
Hmm.
Mm.
becomes faster. So when I say it's degenerative, it means that you're susceptible eventually, one way or another, of
Mm.
that thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the time frame of you delaying that point that you get there is essential. That's the part of where you sort of take care of the body
Mm.
and then get there. I mean, arrive that at that point where you that age around 90s or hundreds perhaps. So we eventually we arrive to that point. It's just a matter of how fast we get to that point. So it's the key thing here is just basically to take care of the body and to
Mm.
practice it like a muscle. Like for instance, for old people, the for old people, they're supposed to be encouraged on doing crosswords,
Mm.
dominoes, and all those board games that we play, like from back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's encouraged
Mm.
because it's
Mm.
it's more
Hmm.
of like the critical thinking. Like for
Yeah.
instance, I find cards, mahjong, something
Mm.
like that, anything with a memory game that you tend to practice it. it's nice to see old people do that,
Yeah.
because it's sort of like a practice. And some old people do even upgrade themselves with a pad. So what do they do with a pad is download Candy Crush,
Mm.
Wordscape, and all of those,
Yeah, really?
brain
Those
stuff
games,
like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't just give them, leisure, or
Mm.
give them leisure time, but
Hmm.
also it gives them a practice of uh what they're not, because the more you get older, the less of things you get to use, right? For
Mm.
instance, specific words, uh engaging in conversations, intellectual conversations, all of those things are diminished through time. So
Mm.
basically, that tool there, like I said, there's pros and cons of technology. One of the pros in
Mm.
technology of it is to use and maximize, like, instead of buying crossword from a newspaper, you have crossword instantly in an app, or so with the chess and other games. So for old people, yeah, I mean, it's there's an advantage of it.
Yeah. And speaking of time, uh, since since we're basically living in this reality, we'd like, before we end the episode, we'd like to get your perspective on something, since we like to explore the duality of our existence here, and the extreme dichotomy of birth and death. Since basically the theme of our first episode up to now, we still talk about it in our podcast, is about living, and also the inevitable uh, death that we're heading to. So we'd like to get your perspective on what is, or your perspective on life and death, being a father, an individual, Filipino, a human being, basically.
My take on it, the Brad Pitt sort of like popped out in my mind about that. Brad Pitt, of when he
Nice.
said the
Interesting.
phrase,
Yeah.
there's something constant in this world, and what is it? What was it? It's like
Uh,
death and taxes.
Death and taxes.
Yeah, death and taxes. So it's that from
Couldn't say
Meet
it
Joe
better.
Black,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, Meet Joe Black. Like, okay, that thing popped out. Death is. I mean, life is supposed to be like taken through by moments, I guess.
Mm,
I'm not saying like you should live in a YOLO way, but rather more of appreciate specific things in specific moments. Because I mean, it's unavoidable. It's
mm,
gonna, you can't really schedule death like, oh, I'm ready to go now, this and that. But more of
mm.
like appreciating and enjoying the moment, spend time with your kid as she grows up. They really
Mm.
grow up fast, I tell
Yeah,
you.
I know.
Um, for I mean, I used to, you used to like carry and sing a lullaby and stuff
Mm,
like that, and in a snap, it's gonna be a different um cycle or a different kind of path
mm,
that you'll be doing. So each moment is very, very precious.
mm.
Like enjoy the
Word.
moments of enjoy the moments of being, of carrying, just even that specific gesture of carrying your kid, like
Mm,
as a baby, toddler, and so on and so forth. Carry as much as you can,
mm.
even if she's already like very heavy and stuff. Ca- Carry him, man, carry him, because that's the only moment that you can find or
Mm.
you can enjoy. Because by the time you know it, somebody's carrying your kid. It's not gonna be you. so so enjoy that moment, because carry as much as you can, because it only comes once.
Yeah, it's a
You
Word.
can't.
beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, it's
It's a
beautiful.
beautiful
Yeah,
Yeah.
thing. That's what makes it so beautiful, and
yeah,
that's probably a good place to leave it right there.
yeah. Well said. I totally agree with it. So, Papa Ben, would you like to wrap it up for us?
No, I just want to thank again, Pal,
Oh yeah,
for
thank you
coming,
so much.
taking
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
Yeah,
This
Anytime.
is really an interesting talk, a conversation, very deep. Also, thank you for spending time with us tonight. Hopefully, we can have you back if you're not busy in the future.
Yeah.
Sure, no problem.
Hopefully we'll be
It's gonna be another. Yeah, it's gonna be another blast.
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully we can get back on the mat soon, man. Jesus Christ.
Oh yeah, yeah, for real.
Yeah, I can't wait to
For
join you
sure.
guys too.
Yeah, there's nothing like a jiu-jitsu workout, man. If that's something that people have not experienced, I definitely recommend it. It's such a good
It's
sweat.
like exactly. It's like a full body workout,
Yeah.
like
You'll be
from
looking for
weights
it
to
after.
cardio.
Yeah.
So that about wraps this episode.
Thanks again,
Thank
man.
you so much, people,
Yeah.
and thank you so much, Paulo, for joining us tonight. And remember, for all the fathers out there, whatever happens, whatever shitty day you're having, just daddy on, soldiers. And thank you for joining us. This is Papa Ben, Papa Loy, Papa Pao. Welcome, Tatay Time, and we're out.
It's father time.